The World Rally Championship burst into life with its traditional season opener, the Monte Carlo Rally. And the big story of the event was the fact that it boiled down to a final stage showdown between Sebastien Ogier and Thierry Neuville, who were covered by 0.4 of a second going into that final stage, with Ogier winning by a couple of seconds in the end to celebrate and mark his return to Citroen with victory. Now, I've got two Jacks here to talk about this, Jack Benyon and Jack Cozens, and from now on they're going to be addressed by their surnames. And Cozens, we're going to start with you. It was a great rally, but how did we get to the point where we had essentially a dead heat heading into the final stage?
Yeah, well, you've kind of talked about it already in the fact that, you know, it looked really close at the finish, and that's what everyone's going to talk about in the aftermath. But this was a theme of the rally. Ogier took the lead in the first place on Friday afternoon, and at that point he had a 14-second advantage. But after that, his advantage over Neuville was never more than 5.6 seconds. So this is, you know, the best possible way that this championship can really kick off. Neuville was able to take a few chunks out of Ogier on the Saturday. So we started Sunday with, you know, we're talking about a 4.3 second gap here. That's pretty intense. That's what people were coming to us for. We could see in the traffic on the Sunday morning that people were really interested in this fight. But Ogier, every point on that Saturday, looked like he was managing the gap, and then we get this throttle issue for him come Sunday morning, and it happened that the throttle was sticking at about 20% when he was coming off it completely. So, you know, that's perfect when you're chucking a World Rally car through the French Alps. So Ogier was able to look at the car in the gap between stages and bring this deficit, or this throttle feedback problem, as it were, down to 10%, but he's still managing this issue. And then, you know, the last thing he needs at that point is a Neuville charge. And of course, what do we get? The Hyundai came flying through the penultimate stage. Suddenly, 2.8 seconds comes out of a 3.2 second lead. And there's 0.4 seconds separating at the end. We actually got to a point on the final stage where Neuville was ahead at split times and would have taken the rally. So, you know, it's reminiscent of Rally Sardinia last year, where the pair swapped places on the final stage. But Ogier just about hang on to win the rally for a 7th time.
I think there's two really important aspects to Ogier's victory for me. I think the first one being the mental strength that he shows. I think when you go into a final stage decider, I don't know what you guys were feeling before it, but even though Thierry had taken time out of him on the previous stage, I still 100% believed that Sebastien Ogier was going to win that rally. And he commands this mental presence, this gravitas that he has over the rest of the drivers, where you feel really kind of nervous for the other drivers when he's coming in. If he's chasing or if he's leading, you're going to back him because he's that 6-time champion. He's got this presence around him that's so good. And the other thing is, he deals with mechanical problems so well. We've seen this time and again. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves for his engineering prowess as well when he's working on the car, and he made some changes, as you mentioned, in that little period he had before the final stage. And, you know, to hold on with, you know, 20% throttle pushing on a difficult, tricky Monte road, I think that was an absolutely brilliant victory.
Benyon, what does this mean, do we think, for the rest of the season? In terms of, should we read too much into the Monte, or should we make sure that we don't? It's obviously fantastic that Ogier's gone back to Citroen and has shown immediately perhaps what that combination is capable of. But is that because of his brilliance, or was Citroen a kind of sleeping giant that needed to plug a great driver back into it? What should we expect for the rest of the season?
I'm sure there's lots of Citroen fans and French fans and Sebastien Ogier fans out there really enjoying that Monte Rally win and think, that's it now, the season's sorted. We've got Sebastien back in a French car and we can just all not watch the rest of the season because he's going to win anyway. But it's not going to be that simple for sure.
Thank God.
Yeah, we've seen the C3 be absolutely fantastic on dry tarmac. I think there's this feeling about the Citroen that it's not the best car, which is probably accurate, but I think also it doesn't quite get the credit where it's due on dry tarmac. It's been brilliant in different conditions with Chris Meek and Sebastien Loeb as well last year we saw in Spain. So I think it's a good car. I think the combination of Sebastien Ogier on the Monte and a car that's good on dry tarmac, where we did get that, we did get the snow, didn't we? We got the snow and ice, we did get the mixed conditions, but a lot of the stages were dry and it was good dry tarmac. So I think we saw a perfect combination of a situation for Ogier there. I think his comments after the rally, he's not convinced that he's going to go away and win a load of rallies now, and I think he's bang on. Got a really difficult rally coming up in Sweden for Citroen, where they've never been particularly good with the C3 and they've always struggled. So it's definitely too early to read into the results. what we can say is that, you know, Sebastien Ogier looks on top of his game, has adapted back into that Citroen setup absolutely perfectly, and I'm sure we'll talk about it soon, but we've got some other performances in there as well that, you know, we've seen Sebastien Loeb on the Monte. He came back and did a really good job, still probably on a different time zone after doing Dakar, and probably not had an hour's sleep yet after one test and then getting in and doing probably the most difficult WRC rally there is. So there's some great storylines developing, but it's just that little bit too soon to read into too much yet.
Well, let's talk about Loeb. He was in unfamiliar colours, shall we say, running a Hyundai for the first time, and it was kind of good, I guess, that we had a Sebastien still in a Citroen, because otherwise I think the WRC universe might collapse entirely. But how did Loeb get on? As you say, straight out the Dakar, not much time to prepare, and in a completely different environment to what he's used to in rallying.
It's really difficult to kind of sum up his performance, because the old Sebastien Loeb you would expect to be right there fighting at the front, and we saw in 2015 when he made that comeback after a few seasons out, he set the fastest time on the first stage and looked like he was going to run away with the rally. So you kind of had this air of expectation about him being in a brilliant car. We've got him back. He's back in the WRC. He's going to do lots of rallies, and it's going to be a fight with Sebastien Ogier for the rest of the year. Didn't quite pan out that way, but as we mentioned earlier, I mean, he'd barely had any sleep since the Dakar and gone through probably the most grueling motorsport event that exists currently. And he'd done a really good job on that, and they'd gone to the end. A little bit of talk about the road book and stuff on the Dakar and whether they would continue and stuff like that, and they still carried on and went all the way through it, knowing that they would have the Monte at the end of it, and to stick with that was pretty impressive. And then to come and do one test in a brand new car and then be quick out of the blocks was pretty good. I think his performance over the weekend, it's exactly what I was expecting. I didn't expect him to set the timing sheets on fire. I think he needs a bit more time in the car before he starts making the kind of commitment that we see from Ogier and Neuville. Completely confident in their ability and in the cars, done lots of testing, ready for the conditions. I think Sebastien needed a bit more time to settle in, and the Monte came a little bit too soon for him. So I think the next few rallies we'll see him really pick up and be fine at the front when he's competing. That's
absolutely right, isn't it? We'd love to have seen him on the podium. That would have been such a great result. But speaking realistically, fourth place is a great finish at the end of that. He used a similar strategy as he did to win Rally Spain really last year. He went against the grain with his tyre selections, and that paid dividends when the iciest test on the Friday morning was cancelled. So we got a couple of stage wins out of him. Great for us. We were able to shout Loeb at everyone and get a bit of traffic coming towards Autosport. And he occupied that podium place for 5 of the 16 stages. That's a third of the rally, considering at the circumstances that you've mentioned already. I think that's a pretty good showing, and leaves us with a little bit of expectation of what's to come afterwards.
He's usually a safe pair of hands as well, isn't he? And it's really important for the Manufacturers' Championship, because now we've got Citroen with a Sebastien Ogier that we're predicting is going to be, if not winning the championship, is going to be pretty close because he's Sebastien Ogier. We've got Hyundai and Toyota who fought tooth and nail last year and will have likely made improvements to their car again for this year. So it's really important that the other drivers behind Ogier, Neuville, Tanak, the team leaders, it's really important that the other drivers play their part. And Sebastien Loeb is not a bad wingman to have in your camp, is he, if you want to score some points?